Unsyndicated presents Shep and Sean, featuring Matt Shepard and Sean Baligian.
What is up? Glad you could join us wherever you may be. It is Thursday morning. Lions are finally back. I know it's fake football. We'll get to it.
Is it?
I still love it.
Is
Yes.
it? Is it fake football?
Yes.
Do you think it's fake football for the guys who are trying to make this team?
No.
Do you think it's fake football for the guys who are trying to put tape together for other teams, knowing that they probably got a long shot at making this squad? I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. And I think it's become a little bit more important, Sean, now with only 3 games. Do you like the 3-game preseason, or do you prefer the 4, knowing that number 4 was a complete waste of time?
I would like 2 because I like
Really?
Shep, and I'll tell you what, I think this is almost a complete waste of time. And I'll give you my reasons. But first, I want to get this out of the way. Look at us. We didn't even plan this. We're like the Bobbsey twins today. We're both repping our own kids, right? I got the DePaul shirt on. My son's a graduate of DePaul. He had no idea who Ray Meyer was. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, how can you not know that? And then I was like, oh, yeah, he retired 15 years before he was born.
How about Joey Meyer?
I think they all try to deny that Joey Meyer, rest his soul, ever happened. I got to be honest with you.
Okay. How about Rod Strickland?
Probably. It was funny because they have like this statue of him near the stadium. And Jack like texted me and he goes, who's this Ray Meyer guy?
Knowing the smart ass that you are, you probably said, read the bottom plate.
Right. Yeah. That's just like, come on. But you Anti-Ghost, of course, that's your boys' band. They got a concert tonight, right? I want to get that out of the way and give them a little plug.
Yeah, they're at the Lager House in Detroit. Probably not the greatest timing considering the Lions preseason opener is tonight. I don't think my son really paid attention to that, nor should he. If you think it's a complete waste of time to watch preseason football, then at least it gives you an option to go out and watch some pretty good rock and roll. So the DVRs are for a reason, Sean.
Yes.
And the DVR will be set for the Lions broadcast tonight. I will go support my son and enjoy his music, and then come home and watch the Lions and Giants and see how many fights they get into.
Shep, okay, so I think both things can be true. I'm going to watch. I'm in. I count on it. I don't think that's a waste of time. I think today, more so than ever, these guys, because the NFL is 11 and a half months now, we know that. They know who is going to make this team and who is not. They know pretty much, not totally, how a depth chart is going to look. I think that there are a couple jobs available, but would you agree with me? Most of the jobs and most of the pecking order, so to speak, has already been decided.
Yeah, I would say of the 53-man roster, Dan Campbell and his crew know 48 to 49 players who've made it already.
Yep.
Right. And then there are some open spots. So with that said, I think it's important to be able to establish some type of routine while you're on the road, routine for a game week. And I think it's important, obviously, to play against somebody other than your own teammates. You said 2 games. Look, that's fine. I think Roger Goodell would like just 2 preseason games because he wants more money on a regular season.
Sure.
Which has always baffled me when he constantly talks about, protecting the athletes and all this. No, this is about money. It's about so how many games are enough? It's a great question. I don't know if there's ever a right answer. They have 5 NHL preseason games, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have over 20 preseason baseball games. You've got 5 NBA preseason games. I've always wondered, who makes that schedule? Like, who decides 5 is right?
Yep.
How do you know?
Yeah.
Because I would ask you this. JB Bickerstaff's probably a bad example because he's brand new. You think Derek Lalone knows who is going to be on the Red Wings before the first preseason game? Do you think he's got an idea of his 25-man roster, right?
Yes.
I think he's got at least 20 names, right? He's got
at least. Yeah.
So do you need 5 games? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
So maybe they all play too many.
Shep, it's different. I was trying to explain this to our mutual friend Blake the other day. It is different than it was even when we were young bucks and driving up to Saginaw. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
It really was a situation where for some of the guys, not all of the guys, but for some of the guys, it was, oh crap, I got to get back in shape. Okay. And I've heard the horror stories from 30, 40 years ago. I'm not going to talk about that because I don't know. But, like everything else, maybe it's been exaggerated through the passage of time. But I can tell you definitively, when I first started going to Saginaw, yeah, there were guys that would kind of mumble it and say, I can't believe how out of shape I got. So it really was a scenario for some, not all, to say, all right, there's a difference between being in shape and there's a difference in game shape. And for some, it was, okay, I just got to get in shape. Those days have been over for so damn long now. This is 12 months a year. These guys are taking care of them. Well, how about 11 months and 2 weeks? A lot of guys, and I'm sure you've probably talked to more than I have, say, you know what, a couple weeks, I don't do anything.
Right. And they deserve that. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're 100% right. It's a different era now where they all have personal chefs. They all have personal trainers. The training sessions are much different. I get all that. But for young guys, I would say even for still guys like Jahmyr Gibbs and Campbell and Williams, I still think these are important games from a repetition standpoint.
Sure.
And from a knowledge, because everybody's tweaking their playbooks, right? So it's especially important for rookies. I mean, I would like to, I'm sure this is very challenging for Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn and everybody on that defense. How much are we going to play Terry and Arnold? How much are we going to play Enos Rakestraw compared to playing a guy like Jack Campbell, for example? Those are all important. So 3 games, maybe you're right. Maybe it's too much. As long as they're getting the reps in practice, but I don't want them to be surprised on Sundays when they first clash with somebody who isn't wearing a Detroit Lions helmet. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's funny, and I have this conversation a lot with younger kids, and I'm sure you've heard some kind of variation of this, because I get it. Like, I hate to sound like the salty old veteran and everything. I think especially when I was first in the business and when I would have to go up to Saginaw, as we were apt to do when we were younger, and okay, you got to go up, it's your week, go up and everything. I think there's a tendency to turn it into something that it isn't. And I'm not trying to disrespect it, but here's the analogy that I will use. I hear a lot of people say, well, I think it's very important that fill in the blank, Jared Goff, Jameson Williams, whoever. I think it's very important that he goes in and gets that rep. Okay, honestly, so let's peel all the layers away. Are you telling me the ultimate success or failure of the 2024 NFL season for Jared Goff is that one series that he gets in where he may hand the football off twice and may throw one pass?
Right. Yeah. I totally get that. I don't think these are important for someone who has taken as many snaps, thrown as many passes, and called as many plays and read as many defenses as Jared Goff. It's pretty damn important for Hendon Hooker, though. I think it's pretty damn important for Nate Sudfeld if you're looking just at that position. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I think it's important for a Jamar Jefferson, for guys like that. So I'm not going to make it a huge deal for Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, or any of those. On the other hand, obviously for the backups, it's vital. The only thing I would caution is just because Jared Goff has taken a lot of snaps from Frank Ragnow so far in his career, and just because he does it in practice every day, doesn't mean that they don't think that's important to gather the symmetry that they need for in-game stuff too.
Sure.
But you can do that, to your point, you can do that in 2 games. The bigger question many people would have is, can a coaching staff truly analyze and figure out whether or not certain players are worthy of making your team in 2 weeks' time or
Yep.
2 preseason games times? Because it's
Yep.
obviously more than 2 weeks.
Yep. I think Skydog brings up a good point. You guys remember how rusty they looked against Kansas City? Thank God KC was equally rusty, and one was holding out, or they would have been killed. Shep, I think there's validity to that, because I think as the years have gone on and some of the attributes that we talked about have jumped into play, I do think what you see early on in the season is a heck of a lot more sloppiness than you're going to see 5 weeks later, 10 weeks later, certainly at the end of the season. The first couple weeks of the season, there are a lot of moments. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I know you watched the Hall of Fame game. I mean, you're just a masochist in that regard. You'll watch spring football on TV. Yep. You'll watch flag football if you could, because the TV never leaves anything. You're not getting a rerun of Columbo on Sean's TV. It's all sports all the time. But and remember, Kansas City is missing 2 guys, Chris Jones and Travis Kelce. Kelce, I think, was hurt. Jones was the holdout. But I would say I think it's really important. We watched the Hall of Fame game. Look at how sloppy and unprepared, to a certain extent, both teams looked. If it's Caleb Williams, it's probably a little different story, because you're Chicago. You want to get him as many reps as possible without getting killed. For Detroit, I think it's such a luxury for you and I to be able to talk about this team that already has 98% of its starters set.
Yep.
And B, there is no drama with this team whatsoever. If the biggest drama is that the NFL is going to fine you $200,000 for fighting New York 8 times over a 2-day span, that's great.
Yeah.
But there's no drama on who the quarterback is, who your starters are, who's injured, who's holding out. Hello, San Francisco, things like that.
Yep.
That is probably, and you and I have covered it from the Pontiac Silverdome days to Saginaw to Allen Park, one of the fewest, if not the only time that I can recall where the Lions have gone into a preseason and hopefully come out of the preseason in this type of situation.
It is, Shep, it is absolutely remarkable. How many times have we sat back and said, there isn't an answer here, there isn't an answer there, there's no depth here, there's no depth there. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't some questions. I'm not sitting here saying we're on the precipice of going on some, majestic New England Patriot, Dallas Cowboy, Pittsburgh Steeler run. There are some questions, and I want to get into that. But when I compare what this is to, I always use the Mooch era. I mean, that was like, all jokes aside, Shep, you're out there every day like me.
We're building something good here. You know that, right? We're building something good here.
We're building something good here. You were out there every day. There was nothing there. There was nothing there. Like, you had little pieces, but you were like, well, we need to add to this. We need to add to that. We need to, I mean, across the board. Yeah. Right now, I'm looking at a Detroit Lions where, like, if you decide we're going with this group of 5 wide receivers, you know what? Okay.
Yeah.
You look at the offensive line. Can I nitpick? Do I wish there was a little more depth there? Sure. You're talking about arguably one of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line in the league. The 100%. Running back room, the defensive line, more on that in a second. The linebackers, the cornerbacks, there are questions. We got to be honest. Sure. But in terms of depth, Shep, there's absolutely no comparison to years gone by with the Detroit Lions. And then it's a weird feeling because I'm used to being nitpick guy, and there's not a whole heck of a lot to nitpick right now.
Well, you used to be nitpick guy, but before it was right in front of your face. Now you're really scaling back those layers of the onion, if you will, to try and find where the problem for this team truly is. You know who the defensive line is. You know who the linebackers are with Anzalone and Campbell and Barnes. You got a pretty good idea that Carlton Davis and Terrion Arnold are going to be your corners.
Yep.
I mean, I don't want to say there's not competition, because there's competition everywhere. The beauty is you've got guys that everybody going in goes, that guy's worthy of that spot.
Yep.
In the past, it was like, he gets it by default. You and I could say, sure, they got issues, but Sean, there's no cavalry coming, baby.
Nope.
There's nobody to
Nope.
save this, right?
Nope.
This is how long this season's going to be. Now you're looking at, okay, if that guy get hurt, you don't want him out for a long time, but at least you do have a little bit of depth in certain spots, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't mean there aren't intriguing questions. It's intriguing to figure out who the backup QB is. Ooh, big deal. It could be a lot worse, man. There's a lot of teams out there wondering who their starting quarterback's going to be. Okay. There's a question on the third wide receiver, Khalif Raymond, Dante People Jones, whatever. Okay. There's questions a little bit in that secondary, and there's questions about the kicker. I mean, we're talking about flipping kicker, Sean. That's a good spot to be in, where you and I can't wait to get past the preseason and get to the first game against the Rams rather than seeing what we've got, because we already know what we got.
A couple questions. I'll tell you a little concern of mine. Skydog said, are you guys as worried about the linebackers as I am? And Rodney said, now we have to worry about scheme and packages. And Rodney, that's my point. This is a completely 180 to some of those camps that I was at, where and then people would tell you, I think this team is better than you think. I mean, how many times did we hear some variation of that? And I would go, based on what? Sorry, I have to say it. Matt Millen coming out with the beard.
Okay.
On the last day of camp in 2008, after not being there all week. I mean, he wasn't there. He was, the guy who was
Sean.
It was always photo ops with him. In that year, it should have told us everything, Shep. Like, all of a sudden he wasn't there. And then he came out with a beard and he was very quiet. And he goes, I'm not going to do a lot of talking this year because I think this team's a lot better than people think, and I'm going to let their play do the talking. Oh, they did, Matt. Oh, did they ever? Shep, I want to get your thoughts on what Skydog asked about linebacker. I am worried about edge. I think, especially with Kaminsky going down, I am worried about edge. And I'm going to say this again. I think there's a big difference between having an organic pass rush and trying to manufacture a pass rush. In a perfect world, I want a unit out there. And when I say unit, with all those multiple pieces, where Hutch, McNeil, all these guys, I don't have to worry about doing something cute. These guys are going to bring it first down, second down, third down. I worry a little bit about the edge. Now, could an answer lie from the trash heap, so to speak? Yeah, it might, but that's a little concern of mine. And let's face it, you're talking about a very young secondary. I trust Brad Holmes.
Yeah.
But it's young.
I probably worry a little bit. You and I both know defensive linemen rotate. Okay. Yep. So you're not going to see those guys out there on a long 10-play opposition drive out there for 9 plays. It's just not happening. You can't do that for defensive linemen. That's why you need the depth. You could make the argument, as much as people want to gravitate toward Carlton Davis or Terrion Arnold, I get it. But you could make the argument that Marcus Davenport is one of the most important players on this team, only from the standpoint that you need someone to help offset or work in tandem with Aiden Hutchinson.
You got it.
Whether you like Aiden Hutchinson or not, here's the bottom line. He's been a really productive player. He's been a dynamite player for Detroit, and he has been worthy of that number 2 pick, not just by sacks, but by quarterback hurries and quarterback pressures and all those ancillary statistics that go along with defensive linemen and defensive end. Is he TJ Watt or Max Crosby? No, not yet. But you know what? He's pretty damn good. You need someone to help him on the opposite side of that defensive line.
Yeah, and you know what it reminds me of, Shep? It reminds me of the absurdity of trying to devalue Ndamukong Suh back in the day. Yeah. Like, do you remember that? And I got to give Jim Schwartz credit. I can't believe I just said that. Yeah, but I know Jim Schwartz was a huge proponent of stop looking at the numbers of Ndamukong Suh. What Ndamukong Suh brings to the defensive line, you can't quantify it with statistics. I mean, Cliff Averill could, but you can't tell me, no disrespect to Cliff, you can't tell me that a lot of that success wasn't due to the fact that he's being singled, because Ndamukong Suh is being doubled and tripled constantly, and that's 100%. What he had to endure.
It's a great example. It really is. I used to mention the fact that he was out there playing every day, and look at the number of snaps he played.
Yep.
He wasn't just a dominant force inside. He was a consistent player for you. And look, I can tell you this. I wasn't a huge fan personally with him. I had to interact with him on a daily basis or try to
Yeah.
when I was with the Lions every single day except for Saturdays. And it wasn't a joy for me at all. But credit where credit is due. That dude was an absolute beast of a player. And the Lions defense, they haven't, I think in the entire Matthew Stafford era, I think they're only ranked in the top 5 twice. And Ndamukong Suh is a big reason why. Okay. You need that push up the middle. Defensive ends get all the money and they get all the accolades. And I get it. But if you pressure up the middle on quarterbacks, that scares the hell out of them.
Yep.
You need that for sure.
Yep. Ray, the old saying of defense wins championships, well, the Lions have to win it because of its offense and an average defense. And can I start with this? And I've said this for years, and now I don't get as many people arguing with me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The NFL isn't that way anymore, man. It isn't. I mean, there are rules that are basically in place to punish defenses.
Right. You've got to score.
That's real. And Shep, I used to say that 5, 6, 7 years ago. And, the 3-year Letterman of the world. And let me tell you something. I was at Berkeley High. Look up the numbers, 84, 85, 86. Defense wins championships. It did then.
Yeah.
Okay. Not in the NFL today. They want to go away from that. They really, truly do.
Evolve
yes.
a little bit.
Yes.
Is what you say. And you know what? There's a lot of cliches. You and I have said this before. There's a reason they're called cliches. It's because oftentimes they're true, right?
Yeah.
We get stuck in certain cliches in sports. Football, like you just said, defense wins championships. I'm not going to say I don't want a good defense because I do, but you got to be able to score the ball. Baseball, pitching and defense wins. Well, guess who has the number 1 pitching in all of baseball? Seattle. And Seattle is, give me teams that can score runs and consistently, and you're going to be in pretty good shape. You're going to be able to score, okay? Tigers can't score with a damn. Basketball, got to have a point guard to run things. How many tall guys at 6'7" and 6'8" are handling the point these days? Mm-hmm. We've got to think a little bit wider than just falling back into certain arguments and believing those that held true in 1970 for Steve Carlton on the mound and Steve Bartkowski under center are the same here today, because it's not.
Tony Dungy said this, I would say probably 8-9 years ago. And it was one of the games, and I was like, that is the most simplistic way to describe the NFL, and he's spot on. He said the NFL is today is what can your quarterback do to the opposition, and how can you make the opposition's quarterback miserable?
Right.
That's the NFL.
Beautiful.
That's it. That's the NFL today. And that's the way they like it. And guess what, guys? The recipe works. I mean, the NFL is king by a mile. The NFL knows what it's doing, and that's the league today.
How many really good, dare I say, great teams have won a championship with a subpar quarterback? Not many.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think general managers are always saying it? I'm sure you've watched it too, Sean. I love the hard knock stuff. I really do. But I like the offseason one with the Giants going on right now. And what did they talk about the other day in their episodes? They're like, okay, so here's what we're going to do is they got ready for draft day. Here's what we're going to do. Because they had a choice of quarterbacks. They could have taken Michael Penix. They could have taken J.J. McCarthy. And they said, we're going to give Daniel Jones some weapons. So they drafted Malik Neighbors, who I happen to think is going to be the best wide receiver in the draft. But I digress. They are constantly, to your point, thinking about the quarterback position. Do we upgrade or do we help the guy that we have right now? General managers in the past. I remember in Cleveland talking with Ozzie Newsome. And I said to him about the quarterback position. And you and I both respect the hell out of him. He's a Hall of Fame general manager. Hell of a tight end in Cleveland, but a hell of a general manager with the Baltimore Ravens as well. And I said to him, hey, what do you think about quarterbacks and why people are always looking for him? He says, if you're the general manager, if you have a quarterback or if you don't have a quarterback, you're constantly searching for one. That told me everything I need to know. You've got to have that position. Now, it doesn't mean you're always going to win. Like Jacksonville feels like they've got their quarterback, and they better because they signed him up for a long time. But Trevor Lawrence and company didn't get to the playoffs a year ago. Now, they started 8-3, and then he got hurt a little bit and hobbled his way through to the end of the season, and they did finish above 500. But you've got to have your quarterback, and then you can kind of fill in around it. Personally, I like what the Lions have done, build from the inside out, the line, but everybody's looking for that signal caller. Otherwise, you wouldn't see as many high draft picks going that route, knowing that they don't always cash in on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Skydog, I would say all the Giants quarterbacks were average. Phil Simms had an incredible run. That Super Bowl, correct me if I think he was 22 or 25. It was insane. And then remember, a few years later, he gets injured and Jeff freaking Hostetler comes in and wins a Super Bowl. I mean, that's the way it is. It's amazing.
But Phil Simms, to his credit, was he not an MVP?
Yes, he was phenomenal. He was phenomenal. He really was.
We can call their careers, if you want, an average. I would call Phil Simms above average. Wouldn't call him a great, but above average. He's not below average. In his career, he wasn't below average.
No.
I mean, I suppose there are certain guys. There are sections to every rule. Don't take this die hard. I'm not saying Trent Dilfer, okay? I'm not saying Jay Schrader. I'm not saying guys like that. But for the most part, you look at, find me the Super Bowl winning teams that had a bad or below average quarterback. There's just not that many.
No,
Some of them get you there. Tony Eason got you there. Jim McMahon, I suppose, to a certain extent, because it was
Trent Dilfer. Trent Dilfer, that's, I mean, really, the list is small. Somebody said Eli was a legend. You know what? Say what you want about Eli Manning, but that was a guy, when the moment called for it, he upped his game. And as you were talking about the Ravens, I think of the much maligned Joe Flacco. Hey, do yourself a favor, do a little, not a lot, do a little. Go look at what Joe Flacco did during that era, especially at playoff time.
Yeah.
Like he was a different guy. I mean, his numbers. I always say this about Troy Aikman too. Troy Aikman, yes, he had so much around him, that defense, the triplets, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But go look at Troy Aikman's playoff stats during that era. It was like he was here and then he went like that. When it was money time, and you gotta give him his love.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, man, people rip on Eli Manning. I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer. He's in the discussion. I don't give a crap. You win 2 Super Bowls. There's not many guys who've won 2 Super Bowls, folks.
You got it.
You want a player to elevate at the right time? He elevated at the right time. Did he get lucky with a David Tyree catch once? Yes. That happens to players all the time. It happens to quarterbacks constantly during the season as well. Give him some love because he deserves it.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Somebody brought up Jim McMahon. That was just a perfect fit. That was in a different era of football, I might add, but that was a perfect fit.
Ran the ball and relied on their defense. Absolutely.
Lorenzo said there's so much talk about Allen and Jackson being elite, but like Goff, they too have been deep into the playoffs and come short of a title. Give Goff his flowers. I'm going to say it again, okay? And I'm going to keep confessing my sins, Shep. I can't speak for you. I thought Jared Goff was done. He looked like a broken man with the Rams. And quite frankly, his first year here, a lot of that baggage, it looked like it was on the field too. And guys don't usually bounce back. He absolutely bounced back.
You're saying his last year with the Rams, though.
Yeah. They put him in
when he led him to a Super Bowl.
Right. They put him in positions of comfortability, and that guy who looked broken, and not just by like his play and all the turnovers he had, looked like a completely energized quarterback. And it's amazing when you put people in A, positions of comfortability, and B, when you have an dominant, and I don't use that word lightly, dominant offensive line. And that's what the Lions have right now by comparison to the rest of the National Football League. So I'm with you. I'm one of those guys. If you missed on something, say you missed. I missed on Jared Goff. I thought he was done. And that's why Brad Holmes is a general manager, and I'm sitting in my basement right now.
I don't know if I didn't know if he was done. I wasn't going to give up on him yet. But obviously, anybody who's going to be successful needs people around them. Good coaches, great coaches, put their players in position to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what the Lions recognized quickly, and I think this is where the relationship with Brad Holmes and Jared Goff in Los Angeles paid off. Brad Holmes knew what his quarterback strengths were, but he also recognized what his deficiencies were.
Yep.
He did everything he could to accentuate the strengths and minimize the deficiencies. You bring up the dominant offensive line, that was it. He's got a lot of weapons. He's got to love it here because of where this team is, the weapons that they have, the system that he's under, but the people who manage him recognize too what his strengths and weaknesses are. And I think it's so refreshing for us to be able to talk like this. I cannot tell you folks how many times when Sean and I were at a studio in Farmington Hills or in Southfield, and as we get ready to go on the air, all we did was complain, shake our head, say, look at what's going to happen this week, or look at what just happened on Sunday. All you had to do was give a phone number and people would go crazy. Okay. Yep. Now it's awesome to be able to hear people glowingly, nationally, talk about your team like it is the blueprint for National Football League teams.
It's amazing.
It was fantastic.
It's night and day.
So Scott put Jim Plunkett down. He's digging deep. Jim Plunkett did win 2 Super Bowls. Okay. Jim Plunkett was a first-round pick, first overall. Jim Plunkett won the Heisman Trophy. Jim Plunkett was a pretty damn good quarterback. Again, not a Hall of Famer. Folks, I said below average. Jim Plunkett was not below. Now, early in his career, it was a struggle because he had some crappy teams. You put some talent around guy. Every quarterback needs talent, man. That's why it's a team sport.
That was an Al Davis reclamation project. Give 100%. Like yes. What he became when he went to the Oakland Raiders and later the LA Raiders, it was a different quarterback. Let me tell you about our friends at Legacy. We'll get back to more of your comments in just a second. But did you know that thousands of Metro Detroiters have already called Legacy Partners to get help with their home and auto insurance? My family did. And our friends at Legacy Partners are one of Southeast Michigan's top independent insurance agents. And I can tell you definitively, they provide a full-service, one-stop solution for all of your insurance needs, personal and business, large and small. The difference between Legacy and others, they help people like me by fixing mistakes other agents have made, asking the right questions to get the right coverage put in place to properly protect you. And who is kidding who? Right now, help save you money, and that's what it's all about. Chances are, if you haven't checked your policies in the last year, you're paying too much, and you could be underinsured. So what are you waiting for? Give Legacy Partners a chance to help with your home, your cars, life insurance, Medicare enrollment, or your business insurance needs. Did I mention they're great guys? No, legitimately. Had them over for a barbecue. Great guys. Call them today, 586-209-4106, or visit legacypartnersins.com to get started with your new quote. Somebody brought up, I want to read what Ray said. The 49ers could win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. Would you call him or elite or just a lucky break to be drafted by the right team for him? A couple things come in place. We don't know like what his, and I hate this term, but I have to use it in this context. I don't know what his legacy is. I don't know. It infuriates me. ESPN started this probably a decade plus ago, constantly talking about a guy's legacy. LeBron James, what's his legacy after the Miami Heat lose this final? I don't know. He's got 13 more years to play. Can we just pump the brakes a little bit and wait? All right. So I don't want to talk about Brock Purdy's legacy. Can I tell you, Shep, what I see out of Brock Purdy?
Sure.
I see a young quarterback who at times looks shaky, but when the moment is called for it, has found a way to make big plays. That's what I see at a Brock Purdy. Am I going to put him in the rarefied air, the elite air, so to speak, of some of the quarterbacks in the National Football League? Absolutely not. But he fits hand in glove with what San Francisco does. And I've watched him, and sadly, we all watched him take his game like that when the moment calls for it. And I got to give him credit as such, because I was one of those guys last year saying, look at this guy. He is shaky. He's shaky. And then I watched him get it back. That was a bit between Blake and I late last football season. And then I watched the guy get it back. So, Ray, I understand what you're saying, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. I can't talk about his legacy yet. All I can say is what I've seen out of him. And this is a guy that, sure, like a lot of young quarterbacks, he has his shaky moments. But, boy, Shep, when the moment is called for it, he's made some pretty big plays.
I guess first of all, there's no reason to talk about a legacy of a 24-year-old. None. Okay. So that is something we have to wait and see. For some reason in our society, we feel the need to immediately start labeling players and coaches and teams and labeling and trying to figure out rushing their careers through.
Right.
So it's not
right. Yeah.
I guess I would ask Ray and anybody else this. If I said to you, you could have a quarterback who threw for 4,300 yards, completed 69.5% of his passes, had a really good touchdown to interception ratio in 31-11, and had one of the better quarterback ratings. Granted, struggled at times without Deebo Samuel, but there's plenty of quarterbacks who, when they lose one of their top weapons, may struggle. Would you take that person? Oh, and by the way, didn't do it by himself, but no quarterback does, helped lead his team to 12 wins, a division title, a number 1 seed, and a Super Bowl. Would you take that player? I don't know what has happened in Detroit where we feel the need to justify our thinking by breaking down and knocking down a guy like Brock Purdy. And I think some of it has to do with this. He's Mr. Irrelevant. So it was a cute little story coming out of Iowa State. And it was really cool when he was there under the tutelage of Jimmy Garoppolo and company. But then suddenly when he makes it and he gets all these flowers and love from the national media and people are talking about him, we suddenly have to find a way to tear him down. I don't know why we feel the need to do that. I'm going to reserve some judgment on a guy who's 24 years old. And if you don't want to reserve judgment, if you want to make a quick call on a guy like that, see, it's funny. Somebody, they don't like Eli Manning, who wins 2 Super Bowls and is named Super Bowl MVP in both those Super Bowls, but we're going to disregard that. But we're going to take a shot at a guy like Brock Purdy, who is only 2 years deep into his career and is 17-4 all time and already played in a Super Bowl. Okay. To me, that makes no sense whatsoever. None.
Shep, you know my default mode is to always go back to some hockey comparison. And if I may, can I present Chris Osgood? When Chris Osgood was traded away from the Detroit Red Wings, there were many people in this town. I am raising my hand. I am one of them that thought, that was a cute little story. He was a backup in 97. Well, 98, pretty much any goaltender could have won that Stanley Cup. So, okay, whatever. Best of luck to you, Chris. Whether you go to the Islanders, you go to the Blues, best of luck to you. And I say this all the time, and I said this to Chris Osgood's face, okay? In 2008, you saw how valuable that guy was. You saw how damn good that guy was. Because I will say this until my dying breath, the Detroit Red Wings, as good as that team in 2008 was, do not win the Stanley Cup without Chris Osgood. They were starting to go under in the first round. That's why they yanked Dominik Hasek. That's why they put Chris Osgood in. And Chris Osgood promptly comes in and wins, what was it, 7 in a row, whatever the hell it was? 8 in a row. As I do the quick math, or was it 9? Whatever. Okay. He was phenomenal. And no disrespect to Hank, he should have won the Conn Smythe Trophy in my mind. If I was down there, if I was voting, I would have given him the vote because where the team was pre-Osgood and where they were after Osgood, I mean, to me, that is the definition of Conn Smythe. And that's why I caution people not to talk so much about that legacy crap. And LeBron James, again, to me, is the poster child of legacy, okay? So if we're sitting there trying to define his legacy in 2011 after they lose the Mavs.
Yeah.
All right, well, what we don't know is he finally went and won a championship in Cleveland. Then he went to L.A. and won another championship. Like, it's stupid, and it's not fair to anybody. Did I just stick up for LeBron James? I did, you get my point.
It took me back a little bit. You're right, but you're 100% right about that. In addition to the gold medals, and in addition to becoming the all-time leading scorer, there's no reason really to push that. If a guy's 36, or if you want to look at Aaron Rodgers' legacy, go right ahead. I just don't think it's not worth anything to do with a guy like Brock Purdy. Now,
sure.
Ray says Jimmy G had similar numbers to Purdy, got hurt, went to Vegas, and was never the same player. Skilled players can make or break a quarterback. Absolutely they can. But Jimmy Garoppolo was simply awful. He did have Devontae Adams. That's a pretty good player, okay? It's not like he was void of any weapons, Josh Jacobs. Give me a break, man. I mean, he just didn't play that well. He had weapons similar to that of Tom Brady in New England, and he didn't really do as much as people thought he was going to do. All I'm saying, and find me, I think there's a lot of great quarterbacks. Like Joe Montana is my favorite player. He had great weapons. I don't care if it's Roger Craig. I don't care if it's Bill Ring. I don't care if it's Jerry Rice or whomever. Terry Bradshaw, Hall of Famer, had great weapons. Ken Stabler had some great weapons. Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, they all had good weapons. You're not winning this by yourself.
Yeah.
Of course they've got weapons. They help those weapons, and the weapons help them.
Yep.
It's as simple as that.
Let's talk about our friends at the Wealth Advantage Group, if we can, for a moment. If you are ready to take charge of your financial future, look no further than the Wealth Advantage Group, located in historic downtown Northville and owned by the Hanson brothers right there. With over 20 years of industry experience, they understand that your financial goals are as unique as you are. That's why they offer personalized, expert guidance to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning. Now, whether you're saving for retirement, getting ready to sell your company, or already in retirement, they can help guide you through every step of your financial journey. They work with clients throughout all stages of life and have clients in over 20 states. Look, the investment world is a complex one, but if you're ready to start taking your finances more seriously, it's time to work with the experts. Reach out to my friends at the Wealth Advantage Group at 248-773-8574 or visit their website at www.thewealthadv.com. Shep, you know what the biggest difference is? I think of all those years, and we always called it Lions or Radio Gold. You could talk about the Lions. The biggest difference to me, okay, is I have no problem looking you right in the eyes today and saying my expectation is for the Lions to win the NFC, period. And you know what? In years gone by, people would have snickered at you. People may have played the cornbread song. Where are the ladies at? Where are the ladies? Hey, can I have another glass of that Kool-Aid? Whatever the case may be. Shep, there's nothing wrong with saying that right now. You are not being a fan. You are not being a slap. Yeah, those are rightful expectations, and that's a pretty cool feeling.
Embrace it. Look, I saw an interview with Cameron Jordan the other day, the really good defensive end for the New Orleans Saints. He was talking Super Bowl for New Orleans in what I consider the second weakest division in all of football. I think the AFC South is almost, if not more, weaker than the NFC South. If he's willing to acknowledge it, I'm not saying Lions players have to go out there and talk about it, but that's what they think. That's the goal. What's wrong with saying it?
Yep.
I said, I think it's Super Bowl or bust. Now, I think you need to get there. And I think that's good pressure. And I think it's realistic. The
100%.
People the people who are unrealistic are in Tennessee saying, I really think this team can win the Super Bowl. That to me is unrealistic. All right. But the Lions, not based on last year, the only thing I would say to that, Sean, is one little asterisk. If they're healthy, they should get to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
If they lose Penei Sewell for half the season, I can understand a justifiable loss here or there down the stretch and what may derail them from getting there. Yep. If they don't have Jared Goff and they got to go to Nate Sudfeld or Hendon Hooker or whatever, that's a problem. Even though I think the Lions would go out and get a veteran. Don't kid yourself. There are certain key guys, and this goes back full circle to what you said at the very beginning of our show, and that is depth. This is why you have to build depth. But it's really, really hard to keep really good players who are depth players for you, wouldn't be a starter for somebody else. Look, that's why Graham Glasgow can be really important. That's why Malcolm Rodriguez can be really important.
You got it.
They may not be starters on your team. They may be a starter somewhere else, okay? They could go down to Carolina and probably start. But the bottom line is, with this team, they're still valuable, even though they're backups in the roles that they have, because you just never know.
It's such a different feeling because how many times in years gone by we were sold hard on Scotty Anderson, or to this day he whose name I dare not mention, it rhymes with Palimba. Our mutual friend Killer would tell me, this was like a bit for like 3 years. Dude, I'm telling you, 10 sacks is your minimum. Okay, you can laugh at me. You can laugh at me, dude. But just remember, at the end of the year, I'm going to call you out. Hey, there was always some, just wait until you see this Camp Warrior, things like that. that's what's so different about this. It's like, no, we've seen this. Like, I've seen this. I've seen this out of a vast majority of guys. I've seen a team being built properly and a guy, playing chess and looking 2 years in the future where everybody's going in 2021. This team's not as bad as people think. It's like, man, if you can't figure out this is all about a couple years from now, you're just not paying attention. And for once, oh my goodness gracious, those seeds that we planted, they grew into beautiful flowers. Now, where's it going to go from here? I don't know. They have a chance to figure that out. Ray,
well, we do know this, Lon. We do know this. Back in the day, Akika Lama-Francis was a hell of a college athlete.
Yeah.
He was so athletic that he played volleyball too.
Yes.
And if you don't want a volleyball player playing defensive end and being drafted in the second round,
swat that shit down.
You better go back to school.
Spike it right in your face is what I'm going to do.
Hey, before we leave, I was thinking about you the other day because I read an article that rated all the hockey front offices.
Mm-hmm.
And they broke it down into 5 categories. One I discounted, but it was basically, the vision is what I said, forget about the vision. I'm not going to take that as one of the categories. But it's about the drafting. It's about the free agent signing. It's about the trades. It's about the direction of the team. Mm-hmm. And they asked fans and whether or not fans truly are in. What is your level of confidence? The Red Wings a year ago in this same poll, and there's plenty to speculate about the poll. Okay, I'm not a huge believer in, the fans say this, so it's got to be gospel, because you don't know how many people are voting, number one. And, I belong to this service, and I'm not getting any questionnaire from them, so I wonder where it comes from. But the Red Wings were 12th a year ago. They are 21st now, from a fan confidence perspective. Mm-hmm. Their overall grade, if you combine the key categories, is a C-. They didn't get anything higher than a C+. And I wonder, knowing that you have told me, patience, understand the vision, understand from which it came. And I truly believe, had they made the playoffs this year, it probably would be more middle of the pack. 14,
Sure.
But I wanted to get your take on going from 12 to 21. And just so people know, the ceiling is 1, which is Florida. Of course, they just won the Stanley Cup. But I found that people are starting to get a little antsy and a little questionable when it comes to some of the decisions that were being made.
I say this all the time, Shep. If that's the way you feel right now, that's your fault. Because the man told you the day he was hired, this wasn't about getting back into the playoffs. This was that was not. And I still don't understand how anybody could have felt better if they got into the playoffs last year and got crucified by the Rangers. I don't know how that makes anybody feel better, but
progress. It's progress.
Yeah, but to me, and again, August 19th, 2019, the man stood up there and he goes, "This isn't about getting back to the playoffs." I can counter that as well with something that so do you see these prospect pool rankings as well? Yeah, there are all these prospect pool rankings, how deep somebody is in their system and everything. The Red Wings went, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on this, I think they were 5th last year to 17th this year. Conversely, and this is something I'm sorry, I've said for 2 years that people are going to have to contend with. Montreal skyrocketed based on the fact that they had 2 first-round draft picks and one that everybody's slobbering over, and Buffalo skyrocketed. So you have to remember the Red Wings aren't the only team going through this process right now. There are other teams that are being creative and getting themselves extra draft picks. And I think when you add it all up, it could be very fun a couple years from now to watch the current hierarchy of this division kind of go like this. And we're already seeing it in a certain regard with Tampa. How long can you keep that going? And watch Detroit and Montreal and Buffalo go like that. I think it's fun. Where's my confidence level at? I feel the exact same way as I did 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and last year. I mean that. I think Steve is doing it the right way. And Steve knows that he's in a town where he's going to be allowed to play the long game. Other places, maybe not so much. Maybe not so much. It's like, okay, crap. After the 5-year rebuild, we're going to have to show some results. Shep, I cannot envision a scenario where Steve Yzerman is in trouble. I can't. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, at least looking ahead to next year. If we're having these same conversations 3 years from now, that's a different, but like right now, I can't envision a scenario where Steve Yzerman's in trouble. So I think he's going to play the slow and steady long game in regards to this and try to replicate the success he had in Tampa. And I always remind people it's not fair to compare the two because he didn't inherit Victor Hedman and Steven Stamkos. There was nothing here, if we're being honest.
But I agree with all that. It might be a different discussion if we're in the same situation next year. But you do have to admit, even though his drafting, I think, has been proven to be good. Okay. The trades and the free agent signings have been less than overwhelming. You can call it underwhelming if you want. So if you're going to break down the different aspects of the organization and what was considered his strengths, people are still waiting for those strengths. Ironically enough, Tampa was rated 3rd in that poll. And I think, and look, a lot of our viewers here are really smart. Joe says it could be because the Lions' quick ascent to success and the Yzer plan taking a little bit longer. Yeah, that could be because this is a fan poll. Lowe says polls are made for polarity. Absolutely. This gets people discussing about various things in organizations and where they're at. But I wanted to get your perspective because I found it interesting that people are there's some lack of patience, and I don't blame them, but there's some lack of patience going on right now in Red Wings love land. You know what I mean?
We have a couple mutual friends. I'll just call them Dan and Ryan for the sake of an argument. And Dan and Ryan could tell you this definitively, Shep. I was having this conversation 5 years ago saying, I know exactly what's going to happen 5 years from now. I know. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. When in 5 years, the Red Wings haven't done anything, all of a sudden people are going to say where this is going, and they'll get my back for it. I said that on the radio show, Shep. It's because this is what was going to happen. And this isn't just a Steve Yzerman thing, mind you. This is many general managers, and a general manager not named Steve Yzerman, and by the way, for the record, not named Ken Holland, told me the same thing. This is like nobody can understand. You're talking about 5 years before the clock even starts running. I know nobody wants to hear that, and that's why you can't verbalize it, but idiots like me can. I mean, that's where we're at right now, Let me tell you very quickly about Lindsay Broadwell before we get out of here. When it's time to get yourself a house, you're buying, you're selling both, you need to contact the right agent. Who do we talk about? There she is, Lindsay Broadwell. Your house is probably the biggest investment you'll ever make, and that's why you need a pro. Lindsay grew up on the mean streets of Northville and has expanded her team all over Southeast Michigan. She's an expert in all facets of the business. Now, when it's time to move, our friend Lindsay and her team will make sure you get the most out of your home and everything goes smoothly when finding your new home. Buyer, seller, first-time buyer, doesn't matter. Make sure you contact Lindsay at BroadwellHomes.com. She will help you with everything from start to close. Licensed realtor at Real Broker LLC. Start your search today at BroadwellHomes.com. And before we forget, Todd, let's get the 2-for-1 here. I can't forget about our friends at All About Catering. All About Catering LLC, full service caterer. They've done things for me. Rick and his gang are outstanding. Graduations, weddings, bridal showers, corporate events. Anything you need catering for from 25 to 4,000 people, All About Catering will take care of you. Customer service and satisfaction is their number one goal. And boy, they took care of us. So don't sweat your next big event. Just go to All About Catering, LLC.com today to see their menus and all their 5-star reviews, or call 586-731-1398 to get your event started. You know what's interesting, Shep?
Hey, listen, with all the tail coming up, Sean, and all the parties going on for NFL, is that not the perfect time to call that company and say, I don't want to cook, come on over, set us up, and let's have an enjoyable Sunday afternoon party watching the Lions.
Shep, we did it for the graduation parties. You know as well as I do, because you have 312 kids. In a perfect world, it would be great if you could run around and shake hands and kiss babies and cook. Sometimes you can't. Yeah, I love to cook, like I love it, but when you got something like that, you're shaking hands, you're kissing babies, you can't sit at the smoker. So you're absolutely right. Shep, somebody asked, this will be the last thing before we bid you adieu, and we will talk again Monday. Somebody asked, who is the name we're going to be talking about tonight? Good, bad, or indifferent? I have a gut feeling. I'll go first, okay? I don't mean to put you on the spot, so I'll go first. Jake Bates. I think there's a reason why he was in the USFL with the Michigan Panthers. I think you're seeing that reason so far during camp. He's got a big leg, which is so important today. But when you're missing those moderate field goals and regularity, it terrifies me. And I'm not going to lie. I know everybody's rooting for him. So am I. Hope the kid puts it together. But I'm terrified of Jake Bates. How's that?
Yeah, I don't blame you there. My hope is somebody kind of takes the lead in the third wide receiver position.
Khalif.
Yeah, Khalif, Donovan Peoples-Jones might be a guy. I'll throw out Enos Rakestraw only because he might get some decent reps there, and not like he's going to play 3 quarters a game. Not like he's not going to make this team. I think obviously he is, and he'll be an important part. But he's going to be given an opportunity, I think, to see what he has shown so far in practice. So I'm going to say Enos Rakestraw.
All right, excellent. Enjoy the show tonight. Enjoy the Lions tonight. Anti-Ghost. Check them out. Make sure you check out their entire catalog as well. Todd, thank you. Thanks to all of you guys. We'll talk to you soon. See you later. Bye-bye. No, seriously, Bob.
Shep and Sean. Featuring Matt Shepard and Sean Baligian. Produced by Todd Losey and Blake Matcherzak. Executive produced by Sean Baligian and Todd Losey. Theme song, incidental music, and related sound effects are from Still Alive by Anti-Ghost. Engineering, mixing, and graphic design support provided by the Unsyndicated Podcast team. Don't forget to like and subscribe on all your favorite channels. While you're there, be sure to rate and review the podcast. Call the Unsyndicated hotline at 248-237-3257.